You're watching BBC News live from Cardiff as King Charles III prepares to make his first visit to Wales as monarch. Welcome to our viewers in the UK and around the world. King Charles is due to attend a prayer and reflection service for the Queen at Llandaff Cathedral before hosting a reception at Cardiff Castle.
And at Llandaff Cathedral, hundreds have come out here to see the King as he makes his first visit to Wales since being made King of the United Kingdom.
In central London, thousands of people are continuing to queue in order to pass by the Queen's coffin. But in the past few minutes, we have heard that there has been a decision to temporarily suspend queuing.
And I'm Karen Giannoni with those crowds of people waiting to pay their respects to the late Queen as she lies in state in Westminster Hall. But authorities are saying if you haven't done so already, do not attempt to join the queue until it reopens.
But first, members of the Queen's family will continue their vigil over her coffin until the doors are open to the public at 5 p.m. Hello, good morning and welcome to the Welsh capital, Cardiff, to the Senedd, where we're expecting King Charles III in a few hours' time. When I left London, I was told to pack an umbrella, but it is a gorgeous day here in the Welsh capital and there is a sense of anticipation at the arrival of the King. He has, of course, been in Edinburgh and in Belfast and then will make his way here to Cardiff this morning for a service of prayer and reflection at Llandaff Cathedral. He'll then come here to the Senedd and then end the day with a reception at Cardiff Castle. So lots of people sharing their memories of Queen Elizabeth here, talking about the many visits she's made, 300 visits she has made here to Wales, to every corner of the country during her reign. So a sense of sadness, but also that small sense of anticipation that King Charles is also going to be here today. He will then, after visiting Cardiff, return to London, where he will again accompany his siblings in a silent vigil by their mother's coffin. Let's take you to London, to those remarkable scenes as well, where we are still seeing thousands of members of the public waiting to pay their respects to the late monarch. That queue in central London just keeps getting longer and longer. It is building up, now around 7.5 kilometres long, and the latest that we have heard is that the wait, if you are in that queue in London, is about 14 hours. And because of that remarkable size of the queue, the length of the queue, we have just had this tweet from the government just in the past few minutes or so, saying that entry will be paused for at least 6 hours. And the tweet also asks people not to attempt to join the queue until it reopens. Queen Elizabeth's lying in state lasts another 72 hours or so before her state funeral on Monday. But let's return to Cardiff and to events that are happening here today. We can take you over to Thomas Morgan, who is at Llandaff Cathedral, where the service of prayer and reflection is due to take place in a few hours' time. Thomas, what a lovely day for events to be happening here in Cardiff. What's the atmosphere like there?
It's bustling, actually. Hundreds of people have come out to Llandaff Cathedral to welcome the King and Queen's consort when they do arrive imminently sometime later this morning. As you mentioned there will be a service in the cathedral just over there. The King and Queen consort will be obviously there to remember Queen Elizabeth II. There will be readings by people like the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, by the Archbishop of Wales as well. And from speaking to the people here today, I think the majority of them say they want to come here to pay their respects to the Queen as the service takes place in the cathedral behind me, but also to catch a glimpse of the King's first steps in Wales when he does make his way here, flying in from Highgrove via a helicopter later this morning. Let me take you to some of those people that are waiting to see him. Karen and Linda, you've been waiting here for quite a while. Just talk to us, I guess, very obvious, but what made you come out here today? Was it more for the service here to remember the Queen, or was it to see the King for the first time?
Both. I mean, it's an amazing honour that he's coming to Wales today, the first time as King to visit Wales, so that's very important. And obviously we want to remember the late Queen Elizabeth II as well, so it's very important for us. And the sun has come out and the crowds are here. It's wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
Did you expect so many people to come out today, or were you expecting more?
We were expecting as many as here, which is why we got here so early, so we could get a really good position. But we're really pleased. The sun is out and it's a great welcome for them both.
And one of the people that actually remembers King Charles when he was made Prince of Wales is Mary Rose. You do remember 1969? Tell us about that.
1969, when he was made the investiture, yes. Well, I only saw it on the television. I wasn't actually there. But I remember, I can go back as far as the Queen's coronation, when we had the street parties in Port Talbot. And I also remember the Queen coming to Port Talbot to open the Afon Lido. So it's a lovely opportunity to be here now to welcome the new King to Wales.
Similar sort of kind of atmosphere today, would you say?
I think it's very orderly here. It's very well, we've been here since 6 o'clock this morning, so it's gradually built up, and it's lovely to see the warmth of
the weather as well.
And the weather. It was quite cold at 6 o'clock this morning.
And Ariadne, you've come out here as well today. Just talk to me about your thoughts on what we're about to see today and what we're about to witness.
Oh, I think history is being made today. It's very exciting, and here to represent the Welsh language and welcome the royal family here to Wales. Yeah.
And I guess a change in the guard, a new Prince of Wales, and your thoughts about the relevance between the royal family, the new Prince of Wales, and the relationship with Wales.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can have more Welsh language representation. That's something I think would be important, as the Welsh language is very important to us here in Wales. It's part of our identity. Yeah.
Thank you so much to the four of you. And it's worth remembering, as Ariadne mentioned there, the Welsh language, because when Charles was made Prince of Wales back in 1969 in that investiture, he was given a crash course in Welsh in Aberystwyth University, and a big part of his speech was actually spoken in Welsh, and I think that was something that really endeared him to the Welsh people. And I remember back 2 years ago, just before the COVID pandemic, we had a series of floods here in Wales. Prince Charles came to the town of Pontypridd, just north of Cardiff here, to see the people that had been affected by that, and it was extraordinary really to see the gratitude that was given to him, coming out to pay his respect to the people that had suffered. And I think again you're seeing people paying their respects to the royal family for the service that Queen Elizabeth II gave to Wales over her period, and now I'm sure the King will do again as well.
Thomas, thank you so much. Well, I can just show you the queues are starting to build up here. The crowd standing in the sunshine outside the Zenith. When I arrived first thing this morning, there was no one here, and it was incredible to look and see the lines of people quietly, patiently queuing in London, and the numbers growing by the minute, it seems. And now we've had this news that they are pausing entry to the queue. So let's take you over to my colleague Karen Giannoni, who was there, and a tweet just coming from the government in the past half an hour or so, Karen, telling people please don't come down until we've reopened the queue.
Yes, they've had to take that unfortunate decision to pause the queue. It has reached capacity. It's reached Southwark Park, which is around 5 miles along the River Thames east from here. And the DCMS, the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, saying Southwark Park has reached capacity. Entry is going to be paused for at least 6 hours. They apologise for any inconvenience, and they are asking the public, please do not attempt to join the queue until it reopens. And the people who had just joined, the latest update on their estimated waiting time was around 14 hours for the people who have made it into the queue. What happens to the people who are turning up there now, who've made their way down there and cannot get into the queue? We don't know yet. Will there be a queue to join the queue? What is going to happen to all of those people? But let's just show you what is happening here. There is something that's become quite a phenomenon known as the snake, where the queue is condensed just there by the banks of the River Thames into this very concentrated area of people going back and forth across Victoria Tower Gardens. And the people who are just emerging from that are saying that that takes them about an hour and a half. I just went to the beginning of where the final security check is. People have said they've been in the queue for 12 hours. So they joined at about 10 o'clock last night. They are just coming to the end of that long, long wait. They are cold. They are really tired, but they're not complaining. The crowd is quite quiet, though. It's quite a subdued atmosphere, and I think the cold is definitely getting to some people. But they're still absolutely determined, and people were saying they're actually pleased to know that there is such a long wait for people who have just joined, because it just shows the strength of feeling about wanting to turn out and pay their respects to Her Majesty. Now, I believe we can go to the very end of the line, 5 miles away from here, where Southwark Park is, where people have been told not to go to join the queue. Nick Beak, my colleague, is with people there, I believe. Nick, what is the situation? How are people coping with the news that this queue is now going to be closed for a significant amount of time? And then what happens to them?
Yeah, Karen, I think you raise a very good point there. What happens to people who are going to be very, very disappointed? I can't tell you from this exact spot, because you can see there are now thousands of people in Southwark Park, and so to get in here takes quite a while. And I guess these are the lucky ones, people who've been here quite a while now. First thing this morning, there was nothing like this, but I think maybe people saw images on TV, on Twitter, elsewhere, and they made the decision to come here if they lived in London, or of course other people from different parts of the world or the UK would have been planning this for a couple of days. Let's see if we can have a chat with some people in the queue. Let's see who is maybe smiling and possibly wanting to talk. Good morning, madam. Have you got a second? Could I ask where you've travelled from today?
Cornwall. Well, not today. Cornwall, though.
Okay, what's your name?
Heather.
Heather. Do you know how long the wait will be from this point, Heather?
Probably about 10 hours, I imagine.
What do you make of that?
Fine. We wait.
You take it in your stride. Good morning. Could I ask your name?
Ginny.
Ginny, and where's home for you?
Lincoln.
Okay, Lincoln, so sort of middle part of the United
Yes.
Kingdom. Who are you here with today?
My son and my daughter.
Okay. Can I ask you, what's your name?
Yeah, my name's Sam, yeah.
Sam, what do you think of this? I mean, you're seeing part of history today.
Yeah, I'm really, I think I'm going to really enjoy it. It's going to be something to remember. And I think when I get into Westminster Hall, it's going to be quite emotional, I think. And I think it could be for anybody.
We've heard so many tributes to the Queen over the past week or so from across the world, from dignitaries, from kings, queens, different leaders of different countries. But for the younger generation, what did the Queen mean to you and your friends? What have you been talking about in the past few days about her?
Well, I think it's very important that she was the only monarch that I grew up with. Same with the vast majority of people. But I was always taught that she was the highest power. She was this mysterious figure almost that controlled, had an impact on the whole world basically. So I think for everybody around the world, she was a very important figure.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're
a scout. Okay,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I my own, duty to an honour to the Queen as well. So
Okay.
I feel it's important to fulfil.
Thank you. And I guess this might be your sister. What's your name?
Priya.
Priya, how old are you, Priya?
14.
What have you been saying to your friends about the Queen and what she means, and also her sort of role in Britain, really, and Britain's, how it's seen to the rest of the world?
Well, I find it really shocking, and so do all my friends. It just doesn't feel real, because she's always been round, it just doesn't feel real, basically.
That sort of grandmother figure, that's what a lot of people say.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you very much. Lovely to meet you today, the whole family. I know you've got a long wait, but I hope it goes relatively quickly. So, I mean, there's one family here, but Karen, people have been coming from across the country, as we heard there, across the UK, but also much further afield as well. And of course, as I say, these are the lucky ones, because beyond this park, a couple of 100 metres away from me now, you'd imagine there are people there very, very disappointed, being told that they have to wait at least 6 hours before they're able to join this queue.
Yes, and even if they do join after those 6 hours, the wait ahead of them then, we really don't know even how long that is going to be. And as you say, Nick, the friendships that are being formed in these queues, international friendships, in the hours that people are spending together, it really has been such a bonding process for so many people. Let's talk to Sarah Campbell, our royal correspondent, who's with me. Sarah, I mean, I suppose we don't really know, we don't have any certainty on this issue of what happens if people join. There's no physical limit, I suppose, to the length of the queue, but there is going to be a limit to the number of staff that can manage it in this very well organised capacity that it's been managed in so far.
I mean, yes, I mean, this has been decades in the planning, isn't it, for this lying in state, and there will have been an acknowledgement and a knowledge that hundreds of thousands of people will want to come. But even so, until it actually happens, I guess you don't really know how many people are going to want to turn up at once. And one can only imagine that these are school days, these are work days, Thursday and Friday, and that over Saturday and Sunday, when people aren't at school, they aren't at work, that those numbers will only grow. So I think that's going to be a growing situation sort of over the weekend. And what people are coming to see, obviously hundreds of thousands of people will be able to see what's inside, but the vast majority of us actually will be watching on television, and there are some moments that people, even if they aren't able to be here, will be able to watch from home. There's one key moment this evening at 7:30. We know now that the children of the monarch, the King, the Princess Royal, Prince Edward and Prince Andrew will mount a 15-minute vigil around the coffin, as they did when the coffin was lying at rest in Edinburgh. So that's this evening at 7:30, 15 minutes. It's called the Vigil of the Princes. And then tomorrow night, we now know within the last hour, the Palace has just released details that the Queen's 8 grandchildren will also mount their own vigil. And I'll just read you what the Palace have released. All these details, there's so much detail, so it's sort of coming out in bits. On Saturday evening, it says 8 grandchildren will stand vigil. It will last for 15 minutes. The Prince of Wales, Prince William, will stand at the head. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, will be at the foot of the coffin. And at the King's request, both Prince William and Prince Harry will be in uniform. There had been some debate, because Prince Harry is no longer a working royal, as to whether he would be in uniform or morning suit, morning coat, which the other grandchildren will be in. So we'll have the Prince of Wales, William. He'll be flanked by Zara Tindall and Peter Phillips, so Princess Anne's 2 children. The Duke of Sussex will be next to Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, the Duke of York's 2 children, and then Lady Louise and Viscount Severn, the Earl and Countess of Wessex's children. They will be placed at the middle of the coffin. And the statement says the grandchildren, at the King's invitation, are very keen to pay their respects, just as their parents are doing the evening before. So there you go, some more detail. The exact timings aren't known yet. Their spouses won't attend, but certainly the 8 grandchildren mounting their own vigil.
And then 2 further days of the Queen lying in state, Saturday and Sunday after today, until Monday morning at 6:30 a.m.
Yes.
We have a lot more detail about what Monday will hold and details about the funeral itself.
Yes, and the doors will, to the public, Westminster Hall will close at 6:30, so no member of the public will be allowed in after that time. And then essentially the key timings for Monday, the day of the state funeral, are that the service at Westminster Abbey is due to begin at 11 o'clock. It will last approximately an hour. The coffin will be in a procession to Westminster Abbey, and then from Westminster Abbey after the service there will be a procession along the Mall past Buckingham Palace and to Wellington Arch. At that point it will be placed on the back of the state hearse. So that was the car that we saw the coffin travel in from RAF Northolt. Very designed in accordance with the Queen's plans, lots of glass, so as many people as possible will be able to see that hearse as it makes its final journey from London to Windsor. Then there'll be another procession taking it into Windsor to St George's Chapel, where there'll be the committal service first of all at 4 o'clock, and then later a private burial where the Queen will be interred in the King George VI Memorial Chapel alongside her husband.
Thanks, Philip. Sarah, thank you very much. Sarah Campbell, our royal correspondent, and we've been looking at pictures from inside Westminster Hall. Such a draw for so many tens of thousands of people, but the message now from the authorities that queue has been paused. Access to the queue 5 miles away has paused for at least 6 hours. Do not attempt to join it if you haven't already done so. Back to you, Lucy, in Cardiff.
Karen, thank you so much. Many lovely memories of the Queen are being shared here today. 300 visits she made to Wales. Last year she was here for the last time, paying tribute to key workers who had tirelessly worked throughout the pandemic. Even the fact that her wedding ring was made of Welsh gold. She said that she liked to carry a little bit of Wales with her wherever she went. But there are also being questions asked today as King Charles visits about the relationship between the monarchy monarchy and the Welsh people. It's being described at times as a complicated relationship. So let's talk now to Professor Martin Johns, the Professor of History at Swansea University, writer and presenter of BBC Wales documentary Wales, England's Colony, and Dylan Foster Evans, head of the School of Welsh at Cardiff University. Very good to have you both with us. Martin, is that the right word to use? Complicated?
It is complicated. Opinion polls suggest that the majority of people in Wales, like England, support the concept of a monarchy. But for those who oppose it, maybe a quarter of the population, there's an emotional element to it that I don't think exists in England. For those people, monarchy is a symbol that Wales is a conquered country, it's a subordinate country within the United Kingdom. We need to remember the whole history of the title of the Prince of Wales. It was used by the last native ruler of Wales before conquest, but then Edward I came along, took that title and gave it to his son as a symbol that Wales was now under the control of the English crown. So for many people, the fact that the title is still used is a reminder that Wales is a conquered nation.
Dylan, language and nationalism are of course linked. How important is it that King Charles speaks some Welsh?
Well, he does speak some Welsh, having studied Welsh back in the 1960s, but the relationship between Wales and the language itself has changed a lot since then. Welsh is now an official language. It wasn't back then. It'll be seen on road signs for anybody who comes to Wales to visit. It's also changed in terms of the speakers. I think the speakers now are younger, probably on average, more diverse. Many more people have learnt Welsh as adults, or have learnt Welsh in the education system, where Welsh is a compulsory subject. So when Charles became Prince of Wales, it would have been unusual, I think, for somebody to learn Welsh if they weren't from a Welsh-speaking family. Now that's changed. So those two factors, I think, are something that Prince William might be pondering: the official status of the Welsh language, and also the fact that there are thousands and thousands of people in Wales from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of nationalities, who speak Welsh, having learnt it as adults or outside the home.
Martin, was there a sense of surprise here in Wales that King Charles announced that Prince William would be the new Prince of Wales so quickly?
I think that the key issue is the timing. I don't think anybody was surprised that Charles made William Prince of Wales. It's a long tradition. Monarchy is all about tradition. But some people are very cynical about the timing. The fact that it was announced straight away has been interpreted by some as an effort to clamp down on debate. There's a feeling that it would have been unseemly to kind of question his decision so close to the Queen's death. And some people do feel that this was done deliberately in order to make sure that there isn't any debate, because a lot of people are very angry about it.
Dylan, do you think that it's going to be a challenge for Prince William now to carve out his role, given he doesn't speak much Welsh? He has lived here, of course, for a few years, but he has particular challenges ahead, like who will he support in the football? Will it be England or Wales?
He does have challenges because he's often, and the royal family in a wider sense, are often seen as an English family with strong Scottish ties, and those ties to Scotland are pretty evidently stronger than with Wales. As Martin said now, I think it's unusual that he was announced as Prince of Wales. In fact, it's unique. I think it's a big break with history. Traditionally, the Prince of Wales was never announced immediately after the death of a previous monarch. So it's a big statement and a controversial one. So far, William, although he's lived in Wales for some time, he hasn't done things like engage with the Welsh language like his father did back in the 1960s. So given the changes we've seen in Wales and the fact that we have the Senedd behind us now as a bilingual institution representing the whole of Wales, it'll be interesting to see whether he does take proactive steps to engage with the Welsh language culture, as he probably hasn't done in the past.
And Martin, is there a generational divide between those who support the monarchy and perhaps those who feel a little bit more hesitant?
I think across the whole of the UK, the younger you are, the more questioning you are of monarchy. And if we take a step back, it is an odd thing for a modern democracy to have an unelected head of state. And young people don't necessarily have that emotional connection with monarchy that older people do. But even amongst young people, opinion polls suggest that opinion's fairly equally split.
Thank you both very much. Very interesting to have your thoughts. Let's just show you the live pictures that we are still getting from Westminster. We have heard, of course, that the government has just announced on a tweet that they are suspending entry to the queue, possibly for up to 6 hours. They're just saying to people, really take a moment to think whether today is the time to come down and join that queue, because they are growing in numbers. From very early this morning, it was about a 6 or a 7 hour wait. We're now looking at about a 12-hour wait in that queue to get to Westminster Hall. But the talk here in Cardiff today, of course, is in welcoming King Charles, the first time he will be here in Cardiff as monarch, and reflections on his life too, the commitments that he's made to Wales back to the time when he was a student at Aberystwyth. And I'm very pleased that with me now is Geraint Evans, who was actually the neighbour of King Charles, Prince of Wales, as he was then in his halls of residence. Welcome, very good to see you. Take us back to that time.
Well, yes, it's 2022 and we go back 53 years. As a matter of fact, it seems strange, but, you know, I was in my finals there, and so I chosen this room, which was at the end of a corridor, and then I discovered, as we were moving towards Easter time, that Prince Charles was going to be my neighbour. I think the room that he came to was, as I mentioned a moment ago, especially chosen because it was one of the few rooms in the Hall of Residence that didn't have a through way, so there were security reasons. So there was I in the room in the middle, there was the policeman next door, and there was Prince Charles.
So what kind of neighbour was he?
Well, he was, I think, a good neighbour. I mean, I never had to complain about the noise or anything like that. You did meet him from time to time. I met him walking back, naturally walking back and forward along the corridor. You would see him in the Hall of Residence. But I was saying that this was in the final term of 3 years. So everybody was working rather busily. I'm sure I should have worked harder, but everybody was rather busy, so there wasn't a great opportunity for socialising. And he came to Aberystwyth, he stayed there, he learnt some Welsh, and then he went away.
We're showing pictures of his investiture in 1969. What are your memories of that?
Not many memories. I didn't go to the investiture at all. I've seen pictures of it, and then the ceremony at Carnarvon Castle. It seemed to me rather, and perhaps for him as well, rather a staged event, but there we are. That is what ceremonial is all about, I suppose, and we've seen a good deal of ceremonial in these last few days.
Were you ever asked for tea?
Well, he came to our house for tea. He came to meet my parents with some other students, and we had a very convivial gathering and a memorable occasion. And of course, the policeman came along as well, just in case we might have put something in the tea.
Geraint, what sort of king do you think he will be?
Well, I think he will be. He's waited long. I've long retired from my job, and now he's just entering on his job. I think he will be a wise king. He said this several times. He has had a long period of time to, as it were, practice for the job, and he comes into it in maturity, and he will make a contribution, I think.
Now, I can't let you go until you tell us about this letter that you've discovered, that you featured in quite heavily.
Indeed. 30 years after leaving in Pantycelyn, and alongside the 30 years rule, I discovered that the Secretary of State for Wales, then George Thomas, had written a letter to Harold Wilson, who suggested that Harold Wilson should speak to the Queen because he was rather concerned about the undue influence of the neighbour. I mean, when I read this letter and I saw it, and by the way, he wrote it in his own hand so that his civil servants didn't see it. When I heard about this letter, I was absolutely astounded because, I mean, it was inconceivable that I would knock on his door and say, well, now then, don't you think that you should be thinking more seriously?
No idea what your undue influence could have been.
No, not indeed.
It's very lovely to hear your memories and your thoughts today. Geraint, thank you very much for joining us in the sunshine here in Cardiff. Don't forget as well, we have continuing coverage from Cardiff throughout the day of King Charles III visit here, but there is also the website, the BBC website, where we have a live page up and running for you, bbc.com/news, that is just keeping you up to date with all the events here and around the world, and the queue, of course, at Westminster. But from here in Cardiff, from outside the Zenith, thank you very much for joining us for special coverage here on BBC News.